Oh no. What's up, y'all? We're going to the movies, but first I'm trying to get across the parking lot to get food. I've already committed to this. I even brought the right purse. Food acquired. Let's run again. Let's go watch Immaculate. I'm paranoid. I have to. Okay, yeah, I feel better now. Sydney Sweeney's latest. I'm proud of her. Go, girl. You do the dang thing. I mean, minus that whole Madam Web fiasco, but that wasn't her fault. Let's go. All right. Let's talk about it. So that was Immaculate, directed by Michael Mohan, stars Sydney Sweeney. Sydney Sweeney and her fiance, Jonathan Davino, are also producers. So this is about Cecilia. Cecilia is a nun. She is moving to Italy from Detroit, taking her vows at this new convent. This convent, from what they said, is kind of a hospice, if you will, the covenant version of a hospice for elderly nuns. That's what they do. She gets there, and there are a couple of people who are looking at her all awkward, like, the way girls look at other girls when they're insecure and another pretty girl walks into the room. That look. Cecilia is a walking miracle herself, having survived a near-fatal accident when she was a child. She has been searching for purpose ever since, believing that God saved her for a reason, hence why she's a nun. She's in Italy serving, trying to walk in her calling. She's there for a little while, and then she finds out she's pregnant by mysterious means because she's never been with a boy, and the doctor confirms it. So now she's a whole miracle. I need to sneeze. That was dramatic. This is one of those movies where you're going to see a lot of positive reviews, and they're slightly misleading. The movie as a whole, just as a whole, it's okay. It's just alright. I have some issues, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the reason why this movie would get very positive reviews is because this is one of those movies where it's saved by a good performance. Sydney Sweeney, I think, does very well with what she's got. She's very sweet, soft, and pure in this. And then we get towards the end where she gets a little more badass, and she sells it. I think she does a great job. It's not the performance of the year or anything, but this is, I thought, miles better than what she did in Madam Web and also Anyone But You. There's progression here. I like to see it. But the biggest problem with this movie is just the overall execution. The movie is about an hour and a half long, give or take, if that. And honestly, this could have been a 2-hour movie. This was too short for its own good. This is one of those big ideas, poor execution. Like, good idea, poor execution. The problem with it is the execution. That the trigger, it didn't last long enough. This should have been a 2-hour movie. There was so much more in this that really needed to be stretched and fleshed out, especially in terms of character development. We really don't get to know Cecilia at all. But she carries the movie very well in spite of that. But we really don't get a deep dive into her character. We really don't get a reason as to why we should be rooting for her, or, we're not attached to her. We don't bond with her. That's important in scary movies. You need to bond with that character in a way. You need to feel attached to them so that when things happen to them, you care. Instead of us bonding with her, we're more so, testing the waters of the morality of the situation and judging the movie based on that. Does that make sense? So it's not so much that we care for her, we're disgusted with the methods. Am I making sense? The religious aspect of this movie, I don't think was fleshed out properly at all. There's definitely a theme within the faith, the religion in the movie, that just it was there, they were on the cusp of it, but they kind of left it alone. What I think this movie could have really dug into was this idea of doing things outside of God's will, being impatient with God's timing. This is not anti-biblical at all. We've seen this in the Bible many times where people try to rush God and do things on their own. We see that with, Jonah not wanting to go to Nineveh. Abraham and Sarah trying to rush a child. So this idea of rushing God or trying to make things happen outside of God's will and then there being consequences, that makes a good movie. This movie was just way too short. They really didn't dig their heels into that. And I wish they had, because it was there. They were right there. So it's just okay. The pacing's a little odd and a little awkward because the movie is so short. The execution is kind of poor. But other than that, I know I've said a lot of negative. It's a pretty good movie. Good date night movie, I think. Basic horror movie. Definitely not the scary movie I was hoping to see, for the spring. I love a good spring horror movie. This really wasn't it. But it's a good movie outside of that. The execution is just a little murky. Sydney Sweeney gives a great performance. I just wish it was a little longer. But other than that, average. Good movie. I complained a lot, but I can't complain too much. We don't get enough from the supporting cast, and I think that's part of the problem. The movie's it's weird because the movie is so short, so much is placed on her shoulders when the story really requires a strong supporting cast, because that's where the plot is. The plot is in that supporting cast. We don't get enough from them. There are a lot of questions that just get unanswered. Like, is there a sequel? I have questions. Who are those people with the red faces? Who was the girl from the beginning? Was she like a failed experiment and then they caught her and broke her leg and then buried her? Like, what happened exactly? Like, there are a lot of unanswered questions, and I feel like we could have had answers to those questions had the movie been longer. But they really just sold themselves short. This was almost like a short story on film. Am I making any sense? My head hurts. I liked it. I just wished it was longer and better.